What happens when a boy everyone underestimates is forced to play piano in front of a crowd? Imagine standing in front of hundreds of people. Your hands are trembling. Cold sweat runs down your back. Every eye in the room is on you, not because they believe in you, but because they want to see you fail. They're waiting for you to embarrass yourself. They think this is all just a joke. But what if it isn't? This is the story of Marcus, a 12-year-old boy who faced exactly that moment. And what happened next would leave everyone in that room absolutely speechless. Marcus was a quiet kid. He lived in a small southern town where everyone knew everyone and where old attitudes still lingered beneath polite smiles. At Riverside Middle School, Marcus was one of only 3 black students in the entire 7th grade. In Ms. Harper's music class, things were especially uncomfortable. Ms. Harper was a woman in her 50s who had been teaching music for over 20 years. She had a reputation for being strict, but fair. At least that's what the parents said. But Marcus saw a different side of her. He noticed how she smiled warmly at the wealthier white students, how she praised their efforts, even when they were struggling, how she gave them the best instruments, the best seats, the most attention. And then there was Marcus. He sat in the back corner of the classroom at a worn-out keyboard that barely worked. Half the keys stuck. The sound was tinny and weak. Meanwhile, students like Brandon Mitchell and Sophie Reynolds got to practice on the beautiful grand piano at the front of the room, the one that had been donated by Brandon's father. Marcus never complained. He just watched. He listened. He absorbed everything. But Ms. Harper barely looked his way. When he raised his hand to ask a question, she'd glance past him as if he weren't even there. When other students made mistakes, she'd patiently correct them. When Marcus made a mistake, she'd sigh loudly and move on without a word. It wasn't just indifference. It was erasure. And the other students noticed. They followed Ms. Harper's lead. If she didn't respect Marcus, why should they? One afternoon in late November, Ms. Harper made an announcement that changed everything. "Class," she said, clapping her hands together, "I have exciting news. In 3 weeks, we'll be holding our annual winter concert. This year, it's going to be extra special because the superintendent will be attending along with several school board members." The students buzzed with excitement. "I'll be selecting a few of you to perform solo pieces," Ms. Harper continued. "This is a tremendous opportunity. Colleges look at things like this. Scholarships are built on moments like this." Brandon leaned back in his chair, grinning. He already knew he'd be chosen. His family had donated thousands of dollars to the school's music program. Sophie whispered something to her friend and giggled. She'd been taking private piano lessons since she was 4. Marcus said nothing. He didn't expect to be chosen. He never was. Over the next week, Ms. Harper began assigning pieces to her top students. Brandon got a Beethoven sonata. Sophie got a Chopin nocturne. A boy named Ethan got a jazz standard. Marcus wasn't assigned anything. But that wasn't the worst part. During one rehearsal, Brandon struggled through his piece for the 5th time. He kept hitting the wrong notes, his rhythm was off, and his dynamics were all over the place. Ms. Harper smiled encouragingly. "It's okay, Brandon. You're doing great. Just keep practicing." Then she turned and noticed Marcus watching from the back of the room. Her expression changed. "Is there something you need, Marcus?" she asked coldly. "No, ma'am," Marcus said quietly. "Then stop staring and get back to your work." The class snickered. Marcus felt his face grow hot. But he didn't say anything. He just turned back to his broken keyboard and pretended to practice scales. Why was Marcus being treated this way? The answer was simple and painful. In Ms. Harper's eyes, he didn't belong. Not in her class. Not at that piano. not in that world. The day before the concert rehearsal, something cruel happened. Ms. Harper was running through the schedule when Brandon raised his hand with a smirk on his face. "Ms. Harper," he said, "I was just thinking, shouldn't everyone get a chance to perform? You know, for fairness." Ms. Harper raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Well," Brandon continued, glancing back at Marcus, "we've got someone in the back who hasn't played a single note all semester. Maybe he should show us what he's got." The class erupted in laughter. Sophie chimed in. "Yeah, it would be so inspiring. You know, giving everyone an equal opportunity and all that." Their voices dripped with sarcasm. Ms. Harper paused. She should have shut this down immediately. She should have protected her student. But instead, a thin smile crossed her face. "You know what, Brandon? That's actually a fair point. Marcus, why don't you come up here and show us what you can do?" Marcus froze. The laughter grew louder. Students were nudging each other, pulling out their phones, ready to record what they thought would be an embarrassing disaster. "Come on, Marcus," Ms. Harper said, her tone dripping with false encouragement. "Don't be shy. We're all friends here." Marcus felt his stomach twist. His hands were shaking. Every instinct told him to refuse to stay in his seat, to make himself invisible like he always did. But something else stirred inside him. A memory. His grandfather's voice. "When people try to make you small, Marcus, you show them how big you really are." Marcus slowly stood up. The room went silent. Even the students who had been laughing looked surprised. They didn't actually expect him to do it. He walked to the front of the class. His legs felt like lead. His heart was pounding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. Ms. Harper gestured toward the grand piano with a mocking little flourish. "It's all yours." Marcus sat down on the bench. The piano was beautiful, polished, pristine, perfectly tuned. He'd never been allowed to touch it before. The class waited. Someone whispered, "This is going to be hilarious." Marcus closed his eyes. And then he placed his fingers on the keys. But what happened next would change everything in that room and in Marcus's life forever. Because there was something no one in that classroom knew. For the past 2 years, Marcus had been teaching himself piano. Not on the broken keyboard in Ms. Harper's class. Not with expensive private lessons or fancy equipment. He taught himself in secret in the empty music room after school on the old upright piano in the corner that no one else wanted to use. His grandfather had been a jazz musician back in the day. Before he passed away 3 years ago, he'd taught Marcus the basics: how to read music, how to find the rhythm, how to let the music speak through your fingers instead of forcing it. Music doesn't care about what you look like or where you come from, his grandfather had told him. Music only cares if you're honest. After his grandfather died, Marcus kept playing. Not for anyone else, not for approval or recognition. He played because it was the one place he felt free. The one place where he didn't have to shrink himself down. He'd spent hundreds of hours practicing, teaching himself Chopin, Beethoven, Debussy, watching YouTube tutorials on his cracked phone screen, playing until his fingers ached. No one knew. Not his mother, who worked 2 jobs and barely had time to breathe. Not his classmates, who thought he was just another quiet kid who didn't matter. And certainly not Ms. Harper, who had decided Marcus didn't belong in her world of music. But now, sitting at that grand piano, with everyone watching and waiting for him to fail, now Marcus was ready to show them who he really was. Marcus took a deep breath. His hands hovered over the keys for just a moment. The room was completely silent. Even the students who had been laughing a moment ago were watching now, curious despite themselves. Ms. Harper stood off to the side, arms crossed, a slight smirk still on her face. She expected this to be over quickly. A few wrong notes, some fumbling, and then they could all move on. Brandon had his phone out, ready to film what he thought would be a humiliating disaster he could share with everyone later. Sophie whispered to her friend, "This is so awkward." But Marcus wasn't thinking about any of them anymore. He thought about his grandfather, about the way music had always felt like home, about every hour he'd spent alone in that empty music room pouring his heart into keys that no one else cared about. He thought about every time he'd been ignored, dismissed, erased. And then he thought, not today. Marcus's fingers touched the keys, and he began to play. The first notes rang out clear and pure, not hesitant, not fumbling, crystal clear. It was Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat, Major Opus 9, number 2, one of the most beautiful and technically demanding pieces in the classical piano repertoire. The melody floated through the room like something alive. Heads snapped up, the whispering stopped. Brandon's phone, which had been recording, slowly lowered. Marcus's fingers moved across the keys with impossible grace. His left hand created a gentle, rolling accompaniment, while his right hand sang out the melody tender, expressive, heartbreaking. This wasn't a kid fumbling through a simple song. This was a musician. Ms. Harper's smirk vanished. Her mouth fell open slightly. She took a step forward as if she couldn't quite believe what she was hearing. Sophie's eyes widened. She had been taking piano lessons for 8 years, and she couldn't play like this. Brandon's face went pale. He forgot about his phone entirely. The music swelled. Marcus leaned into the difficult passages, his fingers flying over the keys with precision and emotion. He wasn't just playing the notes, he was telling a story about pain and beauty, about struggle and triumph, about refusing to be silenced. The room was utterly transfixed. As Marcus moved into the second section of the Nocturne, something magical happened. The music seemed to fill every corner of the room. It wasn't just sound, it was emotion made audible. Every note landed exactly where it needed to be. The dynamics shifted from whisper soft to powerful and commanding, then back again to something so delicate it felt like it might shatter. Ms. Harper stood frozen. Her face had gone from smug to shocked to something else entirely, shame perhaps, or disbelief, or both. Students who had been ready to mock Marcus a few minutes ago now sat in complete silence, unable to look away. Some of them had tears in their eyes without even realizing it. That's what great music does. It bypasses the brain and speaks directly to the heart. Brandon's hands were shaking. He'd spent months working on his Beethoven piece with a private instructor who charged $150 an hour, and he still couldn't play it half as well as Marcus was playing right now, without a single lesson. Without a single word of encouragement from anyone in this room. Sophie felt something she rarely felt, awe. And with it came a terrible realization of how cruelly she'd treated someone with this much talent. Marcus's eyes were closed now. He wasn't performing for them anymore. He was somewhere else entirely, a place where music was the only language, where he didn't have to be small or invisible, where his worth wasn't determined by the color of his skin or the size of his parents' bank account. The final section of the Nocturne approached the part where the melody returns even more tender and heartbreaking than before. Marcus's touch on the keys was impossibly gentle. Each note seemed to hang in the air before dissolving into the next. And then, with one final delicate chord, the music ended. For a moment, there was absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. And then the classroom exploded. Students leaped to their feet, applauding wildly. Some were shouting. Some were crying. The noise was deafening. Marcus slowly opened his eyes. He looked out at the sea of faces, faces that had mocked him, ignored him, dismissed him, and they were all staring at him with something he'd never seen before. Respect. Brandon stood in the back, clapping slowly, his expression a mixture of shock and shame. His phone lay forgotten on his desk. Sophie had her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. And Ms. Harper. Ms. Harper just stood there speechless. Completely and utterly speechless. Her face had gone from white to red. She looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor, because in that moment, she realized what she had done. She had tried to humiliate a child. She had allowed cruelty to flourish in her classroom. She had judged someone without ever giving them a chance. And that child had just revealed himself to be more talented than anyone else in the room. The applause continued, thunderous and genuine. Marcus stood up from the piano bench. His legs felt weak, but his heart felt strong. He walked back to his seat in the corner, and this time students moved out of his way, not with disdain, but with reverence. As he sat down, the boy next to him, a kid who had never spoken to him before, leaned over and whispered, "Dude, that was incredible." Marcus just nodded. He didn't need to say anything. The music had said everything. The rest of the class period was chaos. Students swarmed around Marcus asking him questions. "How long have you been playing? Where did you learn? Can you teach me? Will you perform at the concert?" Ms. Harper stood at the front of the room, her face still flushed. She tried to regain control of the class, but her voice was shaky. Everyone back to your seats. We still have work to do." But no one was listening to her anymore. The bell rang, and students filed out, still buzzing about what they'd witnessed. Several of them pulled out their phones, immediately texting friends, calling parents. "You won't believe what just happened in music class." Marcus quietly gathered his things. As he headed for the door, Ms. Harper called out to him, "Marcus, wait." He turned around slowly. Ms. Harper stood there, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller somehow than she had an hour ago. I didn't know you could play like that." Marcus looked at her steadily. "You never asked." The words hung in the air. Ms. Harper started, then stopped. What could she possibly say? Sorry didn't seem big enough. Nothing seemed big enough. "I'll see you tomorrow, Ms. Harper." Marcus said quietly, and walked out. By the end of the day, word had spread throughout the entire school. Teachers were talking about it in the faculty lounge. The principal's office had received 3 phone calls from parents whose children had witnessed Marcus's performance. One of those parents was Brandon's mother, but she wasn't calling to complain. She was calling to report what her son had confessed to her, that he and others had tried to humiliate a classmate, and that Ms. Harper had allowed it to happen. The next morning, Principal Davis called Marcus into her office. Marcus's heart sank. He thought he was in trouble. He'd spent his whole life trying to be invisible, and now everyone was looking at him. But Principal Davis smiled warmly. "Marcus, I heard about what happened in music class yesterday. I wanted to talk to you about the winter concert." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "I don't want to cause any problems, ma'am." "Problems?" Principal Davis laughed. "Marcus, you're not causing problems. You're solving them. I've also been made aware of how you were treated in that classroom, and I want you to know that's not acceptable. We're addressing it." She leaned forward. "But right now I want to focus on you. I'd like you to perform at the winter concert, not as some last-minute addition as the featured performer. Would you be willing to do that?" Marcus stared at her. featured performer. You have a gift, Marcus. A real gift. And it's time everyone recognized that. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood on the stage of Riverside Middle School's auditorium. This time, the room was packed with hundreds of people. Students, parents, teachers, school board members, and the superintendent. The lights were hot. The piano gleamed under the spotlight. But Marcus wasn't afraid anymore. When he played that night, the same Chopin nocturne that had changed everything, the audience was spellbound. Parents wept. Teachers stood in ovation. The superintendent made a note to recommend Marcus for the district's advanced arts program. Ms. Harper sat in the back of the auditorium. She had been formally reprimanded by the school administration and required to complete sensitivity training. Several parents had demanded she be fired, though the school stopped short of that. But her reputation was permanently damaged, and she knew it. As she watched Marcus play with such grace and power, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: genuine shame. Not because she'd been caught, but because she'd almost destroyed something beautiful. In the months that followed, Marcus's life changed dramatically. He was offered a full scholarship to a prestigious summer music program. A local arts foundation reached out to provide him with a proper piano for his home and to fund private lessons with a renowned instructor. His story was featured in the local newspaper, then picked up by regional media. But more importantly, Marcus was finally seen, not as an invisible kid in the back of the room, not as someone to be dismissed or mocked, but as exactly who he'd always been: a talented, passionate, resilient young man with a gift to share with the world. Brandon apologized to Marcus genuinely and without prompting from adults. It didn't erase what had happened, but it was a start. Sophie asked Marcus if he'd be willing to help her with her piano technique. They became unlikely friends, and Ms. Harper. She completed her required training. She made changes to how she taught, but the incident haunted her. Years later, she would tell other teachers, never assume you know someone's worth. Never dismiss a student because they don't fit your expectations. I nearly destroyed a child's dreams because of my own prejudice. Don't make my mistake. Marcus's story is a reminder of something we all need to hear. Talent doesn't have a color. Greatness doesn't have a zip code. Worth isn't determined by wealth or privilege or who your parents are. It's determined by what's inside you, the work you're willing to put in, the courage you're willing to show, the truth you're willing to speak. Marcus could have stayed silent that day. He could have refused to play. He could have let them win. But he didn't. He sat down at that piano and showed the world who he really was. And in doing so, he changed not only his own life, but the lives of everyone in that room. How many times do we judge people without giving them a chance? How many times do we assume we know someone's story before they've even had the chance to tell it? How many talented, brilliant, extraordinary people are sitting in the back corners of classrooms, offices, and communities, waiting for someone to simply see them? Marcus's grandfather was right. Music doesn't care what you look like. But people should care enough to give everyone a fair chance to be heard. If this story moved you, if it made you think differently about the people around you, share it. Subscribe to hear more stories like Marcus's stories that remind us of our shared humanity, our capacity for growth, and the incredible things that happen when we finally give people the respect they deserve. Because somewhere out there right now, there's another Marcus sitting in the back of a classroom, and they're waiting for their moment. Let's make sure they get it.